11 American scientists, some of them holding the keys to our absolute highest national security secrets, have vanished or, turned up dead.
Yeah, it's an incredibly heavy situation.
It is. And right now, the biggest threat to finding out why isn't a foreign intelligence agency. It's actually the fact that the public is dismissing the entire thing as, like, a UFO conspiracy.
Right, which is so frustrating for investigators.
Exactly. So for you listening, we're pulling from a transcript of a recent Fox News segment today. It features a really fascinating conversation between host Sean Hannity and crime analyst Nancy Grace.
It's a great source because it really gets into the mechanics of how these things are handled.
For sure. And our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how investigators actually separate a tragic statistical anomaly from a terrifying coordinated pattern.
Right, the signal from the noise.
Yes. We're going to examine the macro-level national security implications of these 11 cases, and then later on, we are going to look at the microscopic cutting-edge science being used to hunt down answers.
It's a huge spectrum. And the challenge here, like I said, is distinguishing that signal from the noise. Because when you're dealing with a multitude of moving parts across different federal agencies, the initial instinct is to categorize each event locally.
Right, because of jurisdictions and stuff?
Exactly. Someone goes missing in one state, it's handled by the local sheriff. A death occurs in another, well, it falls to the local medical examiner.
It's just compartmentalized.
Highly compartmentalized. The intelligence and law enforcement communities are basically structurally designed to silo information. It's a feature, not a bug. It's built entirely around the need-to-know principle for security clearances.
Oh, wow. So Agency A holds one puzzle piece, Agency B holds another.
Right, and those firewalls physically prevent them from seeing the full image.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that structural firewall totally explains why the sheer scale of this situation finally, triggered a response from the highest levels of government.
It had to.
Yeah, President Trump has publicly called the situation pretty serious and vowed to get answers within days. And we also have a statement from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
On X. Right.
Yes. She posted on X that the administration is actively working with all relevant agencies and the FBI. And she specifically used the word holistically.
That's a crucial word there.
It is. She stated they intend to review all cases together to identify potential commonalities, leaving, quote, no stone unturned. So breaking down those firewalls you mentioned, that requires a massive mandate from the top.
Absolutely. A holistic review of that magnitude is just a massive bureaucratic undertaking. They're essentially cross-referencing, timelines, communication logs, travel histories of 11 highly cleared individuals.
Just trying to map out any overlaps.
Exactly. But getting to the point where the federal government justifies that level of resource reallocation, it requires a rigid metric. Investigators don't just act on a hunch that things feel connected.
Right, they need hard data. So when you have 11 highly intelligent people vanish or turn up dead, how do investigators objectively decide if it's a genuine national security threat or just, like, a tragic statistical cluster?
Well, in the source transcript, Nancy Grace brings up a really foundational investigative metric. It's one she relies on heavily from her career handling felonies and serial crimes.
Oh, the 1, 2, 3 rule.
Yes, the 1, 2, 3 rule. It's brilliant in its simplicity. 1 missing person is an isolated incident. 2 is a coincidence. And 3 is a pattern.
But, in a country of over 300 million people, statistical clusters are bound to happen, right? People disappear every single day. A skeptic might argue that if you look hard enough at, say, any profession, like accountants or dentists, you could find a cluster of tragedies in a given year.
You definitely could. But the distinction lies in the statistical probability regarding this specific demographic.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the general population here.
Right.
We're talking about individuals with incredibly high-level security clearances working on advanced scientific research. If one goes missing, it goes down as a tragedy, an anomaly.
Sure.
If a second vanishes, the local authorities might, start looking for a shared connection. But it still doesn't quite meet the threshold for a systemic federal panic.
It's still just a coincidence at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the moment a third happens within that highly specific, very small demographic, the mathematical probability of pure chance just collapses.
Wow.
The 1, 2, 3 rule isn't just a catchy phrase, it is literally a bureaucratic trigger. Hitting that number 3 is what legally and financially justifies pulling in FBI counterintelligence assets.
Because it forces them to treat the situation as a systemic targeted issue rather than just, localized bad luck.
Spot on.
So moving from the broad umbrella of those 11 cases, the conversation in the transcript actually zeroes in on the specific catalysts that forced the government's hand.
The anchor point of the whole mystery.
Exactly. The disappearance of retired Air Force Major General McCasland. We're talking about a man with access to some of the most sensitive classified materials in the United States. And his disappearance didn't happen in the wilderness or on some long road trip.
No, it was right at home.
Right. He vanished from his own home while his wife was gone for exactly 1 hour.
A 60-minute window.
Mm-hmm.
That requires severe premeditation. You don't just spontaneously decide to vanish without a trace and successfully execute that plan in the time it takes someone to run to the grocery store.
It's wild.
It indicates either an incredibly impulsive, panicked reaction to an immediate threat or highly precise timing coordinated with external actors.
And the physical clues left at the house create this glaring contradiction. So missing from the home were his hiking boots, his wallet, and his .38 caliber gun.
Which tells one story.
Right, but then left behind were all his wearable tracking devices, his phone, and remarkably, his prescription glasses. It's like packing for a rugged, dangerous journey by grabbing your boots and a weapon, but deliberately blinding yourself by leaving the glasses you need to see.
It makes no sense on the surface. But looking at the items taken versus the items left behind reveals two conflicting narratives playing out simultaneously.
Okay, how so?
Well, the boots and the gun imply a physical journey into an environment requiring mobility and protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
It suggests he was preparing for a tactical situation.
Sure.
However, leaving the prescription glasses suggests he wasn't the one doing the navigating or the driving. It strongly points toward a scenario where he was transported by someone else.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. And leaving the electronics paints an even clearer picture of his mindset, or, the mindset of whoever took him. I mean, a retired Air Force Major General understands digital forensics better than almost anyone.
Oh, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Every smartwatch, every fitness tracker, every cell phone is essentially a beacon. They ping cell towers, they register on local Bluetooth networks, they connect to satellite GPS.
They never stop broadcasting.
Right. So by stripping himself of those devices and leaving them sitting on the nightstand, whoever orchestrated this disappearance ensured his movements could not be followed. He was essentially turned into a digital ghost.
Because if he had taken his phone...
If he had taken his phone, the FBI could have pulled the telemetry data and mapped his exact route out of the neighborhood in minutes.
That is so chilling. And if McCasland's disappearance remained an isolated incident, it might just be a bizarre cold case. But the source transcript reveals the nexus that actually triggered Leavitt's holistic review.
The connection to the second scientist.
Right, a second missing scientist named Monica. The link between them is the Air Force Research Lab, the AFRL. Monica's research was funded by the AFRL, and the person who directly oversaw her funding was retired Air Force Major General McCasland.
And see, that is the exact kind of commonality a multi-agency review is designed to uncover. Because defense funding is not a matter of simply cutting a check. It involves rigorous oversight, regular reporting, and shared knowledge of classified compartments.
It's a deep, ongoing relationship.
Exactly. McCasland and Monica were bound together by a highly specific military research mechanism. Once you establish that nexus, it takes the situation completely out of the realm of coincidence and places it firmly in the territory of a targeted pattern.
You're no longer looking at random scientists.
No, you are looking at individuals connected to a specific node of military intelligence.
Which brings us to this really fascinating psychological element of the investigation. Once a definitive pattern involving military scientists is established, you would expect the public to be demanding answers, right?
Do you think so?
But instead, the transcript explores how public perception is actively threatening to derail the actual investigation. Nancy Grace expresses immense frustration during the Fox News exchange that these very real cases are just being lumped into UFO conspiracy talk.
It's a huge problem. The psychology of how a society digests terrifying information plays a major role in national security. When you are confronted with a reality that 11 top-tier scientists might be systematically targeted, well, it implies a catastrophic breach of the security apparatus that is supposed to keep the country safe.
Which is terrifying.
It is. It's a complex, frightening reality.
So here's where it gets really interesting for me. It is so much easier to laugh off a disappearance as, aliens than to admit a foreign adversary or a sophisticated domestic threat is outsmarting the FBI and the military. So does slapping a sci-fi or UFO label on a real-world tragedy actually act as camouflage? Does it give people an excuse to dismiss the data?
It acts as the perfect camouflage. In intelligence circles, introducing cognitive dissonance is a known tactic to muddy the waters.
Really?
Oh yeah. If the public and the media treat a coordinated attack like a fringe late-night internet conspiracy, the political pressure to solve it as a serious counterintelligence operation just diminishes.
The noise protects the signal?
Exactly. The fringe label serves as a psychological defense mechanism for the average citizen who doesn't want to feel vulnerable. But it is absolute poison for an active investigation. The only way to crack a case of this magnitude is to strip away the online rumors and maintain unwavering focus on the hard, undeniable data.
Like following the AFRL funding records.
Yes, you track the missing .38 caliber gun, you look at the physical evidence, you focus on the human element.
Okay, so this idea of camouflage of suspects hiding behind scientific confusion or conspiracies on a national scale, it's actually mirrored on a microscopic scale too.
Yes, the parallels are striking.
We see suspects trying to use the exact same strategy of weaponizing public misunderstanding to hide their tracks in local, singular cases. The source material pivots from the macro-level mystery of the scientists and zeroes in on the ongoing investigation into a missing woman named Nancy Guthrie.
Moving from the vast national security puzzle down to a single strand of hair really demonstrates how raw data is utilized at every level of law enforcement.
It really does. So the Guthrie case is currently 11 weeks old, and there has been a major breakthrough involving physical evidence. A hair sample recovered from her bedroom was finally sent to the FBI by a Florida lab.
The one identified in the transcript as the teacher's pet lab.
Right, which operates in partnership with the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Now, 11 weeks is a massive amount of time for a physical trail to go cold, making this microscopic evidence pretty much the only viable path forward.
It is. And the scientific method being applied here is something called SNIP technology, which is used in conjunction with next-generation sequencing. But what is highly instructive about this segment of the transcript is the behavior of the suspect involved.
Oh my gosh, yes. So a suspect or person of interest in the Guthrie case has been actively going to neighborhood crime watch groups, preemptively claiming that the hair sample couldn't be analyzed because the DNA was mixed.
Which is just a blatant attempt to get ahead of the narrative.
Totally. Nancy Grace categorically refutes this in the source material, stating that hair DNA does not mix with other people's DNA. So what does this all mean? It sounds like someone tried to use a fake scientific excuse to cover their tracks, but totally failed basic biology. Hair doesn't just mix like a tossed salad.
No, it doesn't. The suspect is basically attempting to leverage the general public's misunderstanding of biology to create reasonable doubt before the lab results even come back.
Yeah.
They're hoping people will just believe that an environment naturally contaminates evidence beyond use.
Right, like claiming DNA in a single strand of hair mixes with the environment is like claiming a USB drive absorbs the files of the laptop sitting next to it simply by being in the same room.
That is an incredibly accurate way to frame it.
The data is hard-coded inside the physical structure of the hair itself. It doesn't bleed out and mix with the dust on the floor.
Exactly. The DNA is protected within the keratin structure of the hair shaft and the root. But to understand why the suspect's claim is mathematically absurd today, you have to look at the specific technology mentioned, SNIP.
Right, SNIP, which stands for single nucleotide polymorphism.
You got it.
So how does that actually work compared to the older DNA tests we hear about in cold cases from, like, the 90s? Because we are talking about a sample that has been sitting in a bedroom for almost 3 months. The cellular material has to be severely degraded by time and temperature, right?
It is. So think of a traditional DNA test like trying to read an entire sentence in a book to identify the author. If the page is ripped or water damaged or degraded by time, you can't read the full sentence.
Okay, that makes sense.
The traditional test fails because it requires a large, intact sequence of genetic material, usually a fresh blood or saliva sample. But SNIP technology doesn't need the whole sentence. It is looking for a single unique typo on that page. The SNIP is a variation at just one single position in a DNA sequence among individuals.
Oh, wow. So it is looking for the tiniest possible structural difference between my genetic code and yours.
Exactly. And when you pair SNIP analysis with next-generation sequencing, or NGS, the process becomes incredibly resilient. Even if that hair has been sitting in a room for 11 weeks and is physically covered in dust, or pet dander, or someone else's skin cells, the sequencing technology acts like a chemical sieve.
It just washes away all the environmental noise to isolate that one unique typo.
Precisely. The suspect's claim of mixed DNA relies on an outdated understanding of forensic science. Modern sequencing isolates the target profile with devastating precision. It exposes the suspect's lies by reading the fundamental biological blueprint they left behind.
It is really incredible to look at the two ends of the investigative spectrum presented in this source material. On one hand, you have the White House and the FBI attempting to map out a macro-level pattern among 11 vanished scientists by analyzing defense funding streams, digital footprints, and missing weapons.
Right.
They are fighting against bureaucratic silos and public conspiracy theories just to see the board clearly.
And on the other hand, in a laboratory down in Florida, a scientist is examining a variation in a single nucleotide on a single strand of hair to locate a missing woman, and they're fighting against the suspect's deliberate campaign of scientific disinformation. The scale is vastly different, but the core mechanism of the investigation is identical.
You need the macro-level intelligence analysis to recognize the pattern, but you need the micro-level forensic science to prove the physical reality of the crime.
Exactly.
This entire deep dive just highlights the absolute necessity of objective data analysis. We saw how the 1-2-3 rule demands that federal agencies view the disappearance of Major General McCaslin and his colleague Monica, not as isolated tragedies, but as a linked anomaly centered around the Air Force Research Lab.
And the underlying lesson for you as a listener,
Wow.
whether you're analyzing a news story about national security or evaluating claims in a local true crime case, is the importance of pushing past comfortable narratives.
It's so important.
It is incredibly easy to accept a suspect's lie about mixed DNA because it sounds vaguely scientific. It is easy to slap a UFO label on a string of missing scientists because the alternative that our secure facilities are being breached is deeply unsettling.
It's much scarier.
Yes, you have to apply critical thinking to the raw mechanics of the event. You have to look past the silos and demand to see how the pieces connect.
Because relying on the raw data is the only way to cut through the camouflage, which leaves us with a highly unsettling detail from the McCaslin disappearance to think about.
Oh, the digital footprint.
Yeah. Consider the general, a man with top-tier security clearance, taking off his smartwatch and leaving his phone behind to intentionally vanish into a 60-minute window. In a modern world where our devices track our every step, monitor our heart rate, and log our location data to the cloud every few seconds, if you had to disappear in exactly 1 hour, how much of your digital life would you have to leave sitting on your nightstand?